Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Rainer and this is my channel Rainier Books, where I review books and do all sorts of bookish things. Today it's time for another book review because I just got a little bit faster with my reading, which primarily is connected to the fact that I don't have work the last 2 weeks. I will work next week and then I will work 6 more days next week and the week after that 1 day, and then I will be 4 weeks off, and I hope to be able to have a new big TBR for my holidays. Today I want to talk to you about a very political book. This is about the current situation in the United States, and an analysis. This is about a book by Masha Gessen that's called Surviving Autocracy. I'm going to talk about that book. A few days after the 2016 election, which to the surprise of many people in the United States and all over the world ended with a former TV star becoming the next president-elect, Masha Gessen, the author of the book that I'm going to talk about, wrote an op-ed in the New York Review of Books that went viral and became one of the most read articles in the history of the page, I believe. I will link to Masha Gessen's article in the description below. It's very readable and very good, even after almost 4 years. Already then, Masha Gessen was abashed by the reactions of politicians, of Hillary Clinton, who had just lost the election, Barack Obama, who was before Donald Trump in the White House and was about to move out from the White House soon. They was also abashed by the reaction of Elizabeth Warren, and with a slightly more skeptic approach, Bernie Sanders. All of them said that Donald Trump should have a fair chance to become the new president of the Americans, and that the majority of Americans didn't want him to be president. He lost the popular vote. But all of these politicians said, give him a new chance. Masha Gessen wrote, and they wrote that in 2016, most important, Trump is the first candidate in memory who not ran for president, but for autocrat, and won. Already then, Gessen warned that the autocrat meant what he says, that they saw the development in American history with their own experience of having been born and raised in an autocracy in Russia. Their studies and writing about Putin's Russia gave Masha Gessen a well-deserved National Book Award in 2017 with their book, The Future is History. Now Masha Gessen takes on the United States, the country they have moved to in the early 1990s. And this book is a brilliant, breathtaking and frightening analysis of the current status and how it could become the way it became. The Hungarian sociologist Balint Magyar, describing the development of autocracy in his own native country, Hungary, has said that the language of both the media and the academy were not up to the task. The same thing happened in the United States. Gessen writes, we were using the language of political disagreement, judicial procedure, or partisan discussion to describe something that was crushing the system that such terminology was invented to describe. While Barack Obama wrote in the days after the election of 2016 that the sun will rise over the earth again, so that actually nothing bad could happen because the sun would also rise over America on the next day, Gessen already warned on the same day that the institutions, quote, will not save you, drawing from their experience of writing about Russia, Hungary, and Israel. Their book is divided into 3 parts. The first part describes the partly successful attempt on the institutions of the autocracy. And the second part deals with the reaction of the media to what happened over the course of the last 3.5 years. And the second part is called King of Reality. That's the headline of the second part of the book. By using the language of American politics, the language they were educated and taught to use, even the liberal journalists and liberal experts, with their flagship, which of course is the New York Times, treated the Trump presidency as a continued normalcy when it was not that at all. Gessen comes to that conclusion in their book. Donald Trump has accused the liberal media for spreading fake news. he has called the liberal media the enemy of the people, an expression that one of the worst and most horrible dictators of the 20th century, Joseph Stalin, has invented. Gessen describes how the administration of the White House treated the media with contempt and neglect from the very beginning, from the president to his pundits, his speakers like Sean Spicer, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne Conway, the woman who invented the tremendously crazy expression of alternative facts. But the media has complied. On one of her first days as speaker in the White House, Gessen describes that Sarah Huckabee Sanders forced the journalists who participated in that press conference in the press room in the White House, she forced those journalists to, before they were allowed to ask a question to her, to address a question to her, they were forced to say what they were happy about, what they were glad about, and what they were grateful about. And almost all of those journalists from the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, of course, obeyed, and Sanders and the new White House had set the rules. Quote, she had shown who was boss. She could hold journalists to an arbitrary rule. The third and final part of the book is devoted to the question, who is us? Because autocracies always define an us, a limited number of people in a society, and they define also in contradiction to the us of them. A group of people you have to be afraid for, you have to be monitoring, you have to be fighting against. It's always us versus them. So who is us? Trumpism, Masha Gessen says, has successfully, at least for its followers, defined the us in the United States and the ever-growing them. Trump's United States are no longer the haven for refugees from all over the world. That liberal media has not recognized how it's played by the strategists is shown by the caravan incident. And this is a very good example that Masha Gessen is giving here. When Donald Trump raved in his rallies 2 years ago, I think before the 2018 midterm elections, that very bad people and terrorists were on their way to the United States of America from Central America in the so-called caravan. Masha Gessen refers to one example when CNN's journalist Brian Stelter showed a map where he positioned the so-called caravan somewhere in Central America, and disputing that what Donald Trump had said earlier, that the caravan was about to close to the border of the United States. Stelter just showed a graph, showed a map with another position of the caravan, of the so-called caravan, much far south and much more far away from the United States. By implication, he and Trump did not disagree about whether the caravan presented a threat, only about its current position. Masha also shows in their book that the Trump presidency is not an exception in the history of the United States, but actually a more or less logical consequence of what happened in the past decades in American politics. And Gessen says that Donald Trump will disappear one day, soon or in 4 years, but that the reason why a phenomenon like Trump came into power will not disappear if the United States just replace him with somebody without visions, because vision is the most important thing to overcome the roots of why Trump became president. And let me finish this review of this remarkable and brilliant book by quoting the final paragraph of Masha Gessen's book. We relate to the virus in some ways as we relate to Trump. We yearn desperately to return to a time of imagined normalcy before Trump and before the coronavirus. But we can heal only by looking forward, perhaps to a life that will be slower, more environmentally responsible and less materially comfortable, but also more clearly rooted in mutual aid and the understanding of our fundamental equality and interdependence. Now that the pandemic, aided by Trump, has stripped our politics and our society to the rare basics, the question facing Americans is, what do we want our future to look like? Will we, as we did after 9/11, sacrifice civil liberties and human rights? Will we, as we did in response to the financial crisis of 2008, create even greater wealth inequality? Will we, in other words, choose solutions that exacerbate the root problems? In 2020, that would mean forfeiting more freedoms, accepting ever greater inequality, and re-electing Trump. Or will we commit ourselves to reinvention? That's how the book concludes. It's an incredibly readable and incredibly well-formulated book with deep thoughts, analysis, things that I have never seen so clearly and logical developed as Masha Gessen has did. It's a 5-star book, and I think it's a nominee again for the National Book Award. If I would be able to nominate books for the National Book Award in nonfiction, this must be a nominee. Read it. It's very important. It's democracy. That was my review of Masha Gessen's Surviving Autocracy. Very political review, not directly bipartisan. We cannot always be bipartisan when democracy is at stake, I think. Then we have to take sides, and we have to defend the civil liberties, and we have to stand up against racism. Black Lives Matter. We have to stand up against bigotry. We have to stand up for minorities. We have to stand up for our friends in the LGBTQ community. Otherwise, we are lost. Thanks for watching this. Please subscribe to my channel, and if you like this, and tell other people about it. Have a good day wherever you are, and stay safe. Thank you very much for watching this. Bye bye.